If you haven't already seen it, our fish has a pretty cool attack animation, and that's what we're going to hook up now. You can see he does this roll, and he's supposed to shoot off a bunch of spikes. Those are the spikes on top of his head. So let's hook it up. We're going to go to the fish's animator, and we're going to drag out the attack roll fish animation onto the animator. We need to add a parameter that'll be a trigger for when it should attack, and we'll just call this attack. And then we'll make an attack animation transition. So we'll do make transition, go to attack roll, and do a make a transition back. But on the transition from move to attack, we'll just add in the attack condition there. So we have that condition of that trigger to go into attack, and then we have has exit time on, so it'll go back out as soon as the animation completes. All right, that'll work, but we need something to actually fire this off. And we don't want to necessarily fire this off on some sort of a timer or something else. We want it to fire off when it gets to specific points. I mean, a timer could theoretically work, but it seems a little bit complicated when really we want to be able to set the point somewhere along our spline where our fish will attack. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to add some fish attack points or just some attack points to our spline. And you could think of these as any additional data that you could add. You could always refactor this and change it to do whatever it is that you want at the different points in time. Let's select the spline and create a new script. We're going to call this SplineAttackPoints. We'll generate a script for that, and we'll open it up in our code editor. In our SplineAttackPoints, we're going to need a reference to our spline container. So we'll add a serialized field of type spline container, and this is just going to be named underscore spline container. Now we don't use a spline here because the spline will get serialized, and if we actually go back to our spline object here, you'll see that this is actually a container that contains multiple splines. It has the name spline here, so it gets a little bit confusing. You might grab the wrong type. Just remember, if you want to reference the scene object here or the component, use the spline container. Now I can drag my spline container over and you can see that that reference appears just fine. I'm going to go back into code, and what we want to do next is add in a list of points, or points where our player will attack. I'm going to add, or not our player, but our fish. We'll add a serialized field. It's going to be a list of floats, which will be the percentages along the way, and I'll call this attack points. Now I'm going to get rid of our start and update methods because we don't need these here, and we'll add an on draw gizmos instead. And now we're going to loop through all of our attack points, and for each attack point, we'll just draw a gizmo on our spline at the point where we want to attack. That way we can see exactly visually right in the editor where our attacks are going to happen. So we're going to do a loop, do a for each loop of all of our spline, no, not our spline container, our attack points. There we go, and we'll call these, let's just call them point. For each point in attack points. For each one of them, we'll get the position along our spline, and we'll do that using, let's say, vector3 position equals, and we need to use our spline container, and we're going to use the evaluate position. Let's see if I can get that right. Evaluate position method. We'll give it our point value. This will give us a position along the spline at whatever percent we've given it for this point here. Now we've got our position. We're going to do a gizmo. So let's do gizmos.draw color, or draw, let's say, not draw color, color equals, and we'll do color.red. Make sure it's nice and visible. And then I'll do a sphere, like gizmos.draw sphere. And we're going to draw it right at our position and give it a value, a size of maybe like 0.2. So this should give us all of our spline positions that we've added, or our attack points, visible on the object as gizmos, or in our scene view as gizmos. Let's go try it out. By default, we should have none. If I expand out attack points and hit plus, I get a point right here at the beginning. If I hit plus again, I have a second point at the beginning. But let's say I drag this value out. You can see that little red dot is moving along. And if I wanted my first one to be right around here, it looks like 0.1 is too high. I'd probably go with about a 0.07. There we go. Then I can duplicate that, add in another point, and move it over here to wherever the next position I want to attack is. It's probably going to be like a 0.15, no, 0.2. There we go, and so on. I can keep adding these in. Now we could make some slightly better custom editors that allow us to slide and drag this, but realistically, most of the time it's probably not worth it unless we end up with a bunch of designers building these, or we need a lot of control over them. We need to constantly change them. But as you can see here, with just a little bit of value typing in, I'm very quickly able to fill in all of these data points, and we can change these very easily too. We don't have to do very much work at all to modify this. So let's go with like a 61, a 62. I want them all to kind of fire off right before we get to the peak. So I think we've got one more attack point here to add in, which is going to be the one where it comes up and then loops all the way over there. So what's that going to be, like a 0.85 or 86? There we go. And now I've got all of my spline attack points ready to go. Next, we'll set something up on our fish to actually use these. But for now, we've got our gizmos set up and our spline attack points script working. I think I want to check this in. So go into Plastic, say we added spline attack points, and check that in.